In this video, I'm going to show you the easiest way to build a native mobile application directly in Lovable using the Despia MCP. Let's take a look at this. So Lovable now has support for custom integrations. So if you click on the plus here and you go to integrations and then you go on manage integrations, you will see that you have Lovable Cloud, Lovable AI, Stripe, Supabase, Shopify, but then you also have the MCP servers, and they allow for Lovable to get access to certain functionalities and integrations of servers from third-party tools. And you have like, N8N and Linear and Notion and all of them, but you also have new MCP server. And the beautiful thing that we released here with Despia is the Despia SDK helper, because the biggest problem with Despia is for non-technical users to correctly prompt those AI models to use our documentation and our SDK correctly. Because if you take a look and let's say revenue CAD paywalls, there is some proprietariness to Despia. You have to call a Despia function and the commands in the function have to be correct, right? And the biggest problem was, making sure that you have to copy it and paste it in, and then you have to explain a little bit. You don't have to do this any longer because now the MCP will be able to do all of this for you. It'll be able to provide all the information that the AI needs to set it up correctly. So in Lovable here, we can click on new MCP server and we can just add a new one. So we can give it a name of Despia helper, just like this. And then we can just copy this MCP URL that we have in this documentation page. Oh, that's the wrong page here. And we'll put this URL in here. And keep in mind, this is the beta one from Despia. This is not the final one. The final one from Despia will be able to give you features directly into Lovable. So from Lovable, you can publish your application to the App Store. You don't have to log into Despia. You don't have to do anything. You can just say, hey, Lovable, ship this new version to the App Store and change those settings that are native code, and it'll automatically start editing those and it will publish them to the Despia infrastructure, and then the Despia infrastructure will facilitate the build process. It'll call a robot to then go in an M2 Apple computer, build your application and ship it from the Apple computer to the App Store, all automated with the MCP. So there's so much more coming, but we want to give this already to you because it's going to solve the biggest problem in setting up Despia, because it can be a very frustrating process when you don't know what you should ask because you're not technical, and then the AI is like, okay, so, how do you want this to be set up? And you're like, I don't know, just do it, So this is going to solve that kind of problem. So let's add the server. And now, server does not support OAuth authentication. So the thing is with this new thing here, it tries to authenticate for some reason. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to do bearer token, and I'm just going to type really anything in here. So we can just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, something like that. And let's add the server. And now it actually added it successfully. So it's a little bit of a bug with Lovable, where when you add a custom MCP server, it kind of like needs authentication, even though they should also work without authentication. They still expect authentication. The Despia MCP does not require authentication yet, at least the helper one, to help you implement those features. So just put anything in there, right? When you go here on the, I can go back into it, but you saw how I just clicked on there and I added like anything, like just put test 1, 2, 3 in there. And this will be a login token. It will not validate it on our server, but just put it in there. Okay. And then you can manage your servers, as you can see. The Despia MCP is enabled and all that kind of stuff here. Let's go back to it. And as you can see, we now have the NPM features tool. So there you go. So now it's integrated. So now comes the beauty. Now on my integrations, I'm going to select, oh, we don't need to select it even. This is great. Now let's say, what can you do with Despia? And I think because it's a very new feature, I don't even think we need to add it. I think it is already integrated. That's the ease of use with Lovable. What can you do with Despia? Let's just send this to Lovable and let's see what is going on here. But this is very cool. Despia Adventures, I like it. And then on settings here, you will see, you will be able then to go to integrations, and manage your custom MCPs here. But they aren't automatically enabled, so let's take a look at this. Now, as you can see, this is really cool. I'll fetch information about Despia's capabilities. NPM feature, you see, I'm going to say always allow with the Despia MCP, very important, and then I'm just going to allow it. Now it's natively integrating with Despia server that contains all the Despia SDKs, and we're adding more information in there. To our MCP server. In the next couple of weeks, we'll be adding best practices. We'll be able to add the most common issues why your app doesn't work and how to fix them with documentation and live code and all that kind of stuff. This is just the first attempt of getting this to you so you can test it out. You can build apps with it. You can tell us what's good, what doesn't work, what you want us to make better. This is not even the start of it. The whole idea is that you can build a full mobile application from Lovable without ever having to leave Lovable. You'll be able to upload your app icon in here through the MCP. You'll be able to set up your Apple developer account through the MCP. You'll be able to select the Apple developer account that you want to choose through the MCP. Everything that you can do in the Despia editor or you would be doing in Apple developer, the goal is to have this be done through our Lovable MCP that also works with everything else besides Lovable. Now, for now, we just had to get this MCP out there to solve the immediate problem of the documentation issue, but there's so much more coming, and I can't wait to get your feedback on this. So now, as you can see, it finally knows what Despia is, and this was a big problem for many people. Despia converts web apps into fully native iOS apps, and it knows exactly how it works and how the SDKs work. And now here, as you can see, I can see add biometric auth, add in-app purchases. How cool is this? Now I can click on add biometric auth, and I'm going to send this. Now, here's the thing. Normally, it would do some crazy capacitor stuff, and then you're stuck with capacitor in, I don't know, VS Code, and then you're like, how do I deploy this thing? Or it doesn't work and all that kind of stuff. But there's some fun stories with that. Or, and here comes the best one, or you would just do a PWA and you wouldn't have the functionality. And then you're just stuck with this. Now with Despia, it gives you an easy way to deploy your application, and it gives you a very easy way to add those features now with the MCP into Lovable. So as you can see, it is always going back to Capacitor. This is just what it loves to do because there's lots of stuff about Capacitor on the internet, right? But we're going to use with Despia. So we always have the option. Adding the Despia MCP is not going to make Lovable biased. Lovable will still be unbiased and tell you what it thinks is better. So let's take a look at this. So we have three options here. We can do Despia, and it deserves to be number 1 though. And we have Capacitor. I think it deserves to be number 2. And then option 3, just a basic web app. And there's no biometric authentication really going on, but you could use APIs and all that kind of stuff. Web authentication, yeah, that could work. So there you go. Which approach would you prefer? If you want the simplest path to get Face ID in a mobile app, I'd recommend Despia. So now you can see, use Despia native, use Capacitor, use Web API browser only. So we can click on use Despia. I can now send this to Lovable, and I always have the option. You want to do this with Capacitor, or you want to do this with Despia. You always have the option. That's the beautiful thing. If you don't like Despia, you can always use Capacitor. If you don't like Capacitor, you can always use Despia. I don't see them as competition. I see them as two separate ways of doing the same thing for two separate audiences. So it depends on what you prefer. You can use what makes more sense for you. But obviously, I would prefer Despia because it's so simple and so easy. But I'll set up Despia native with biometric authentication for you. Since biometric auth typically protects user accounts, let me first clarify your authentication needs. Just biometric lock. I'm just going to say something following here. I'm going to say, I want a demo app with a handful of Despia native features with a handful of Despia native features to test them. No login needed. Now, here's the thing. If you've used Despia and Lovable, you know the problem. It would now hallucinate a bunch of features that do not exist unless you go to the documentation and paste stuff over and be very careful and watch over Lovable what it's doing. You don't have to worry about that anymore. Now, as you can see, it does follow the Despia documentation through the MCP. It installs Despia native. That is correct. It creates a beautiful demo page here. And now, as you can see, it's installing Despia, the latest version. It's a little bit cut off, but you can see LED for latest. And now it's building the application, creating the pages. So this new MCP server is really making your life super easy. And you can always just see your MCP server here with the Despia one in integrations. Now, one thing you need to know, you need to be on a business plan to get access to that. So the pro plan is not enough. I was on the pro plan. I paid like $200 for the pro plan for like 1,200 credits, I think. And now I had to upgrade to the business plan, which is the same price. You just get less credits. You get like 400. So they used to have this MCP for like a day or two available on all plans. Now they made some changes that it's only available on the business plan. So that's something that you need to consider, that it's only on the business plan. But I do think as more and more people use this feature and as Lovable receives more and more requests and more use cases for using custom MCPs, at some point they will make it available to everyone. But I do have to ask for your help a little bit here. I would appreciate if you could help me with that, or if you could help us with that. If you go into your Lovable project here and click on this and go on settings here, if you go to integrations right now, because you need to have the business plan to use the Despia MCP, if you could do me a favor, I'd greatly appreciate that. If you go to the integration page, you scroll all the way down here and it says missing an integration. Please click on request and please put in Despia native. I would greatly appreciate that, and submit it to the Lovable team so the Lovable team knows that there are many people interested in the Despia MCP and getting that baked into Lovable directly so you don't have to upgrade your Lovable plan to access the MCP. The more people we get to do this, the more likely it is that they're going to add it in there for free, so you don't have to upgrade to add it as a custom MCP, so it'll be next to all of those other pre-built ones. If you could do this, I would greatly appreciate it, because it's also probably going to save lots of Despia users a lot of money and lots of Lovable users a lot of money. But for now, it's still cheaper than hiring a developer. So there you go. We have the detect platform functionality. We have haptic feedback. We have device information, native clipboard, store location, all that kind of stuff. So now, is the code even correct? This is the biggest issue that people always have. Let's take a look at the code, and I'm going to tell you if it is correct. So let's just take a look at some of the files here. And as you can see, first of all, it's importing Despia from Despia native. That's correct. And then as you can see, it's not using capacitor stuff, so it's not confusing them, as it always sometimes likes to do. That's fantastic. And then as you can see, it correctly gets the user agent is Despia. That is 100% correct. And haptic feedback, trigger haptic feedback, if includes haptic feedback, requires Despia native runtime. And it does actually correctly call the Despia SDK for haptic feedback without us having to copy and paste anything. This is amazing. The biometric one, it handles the bio callback functions successfully. That's exactly how Despia calls them. Yes, this is correct. It defines them, and then it calls BioAuth. That's 150% correct. So it set it up all correctly. First shot. This is amazing. And then we have the clipboard. That is correct, and it even knows how to use the asynchronous Despia SDK. Oh, this is amazing. Data as any clipboard. Wow. This is all correct. This is all correct first shot. And I know there's so many people using Lovable and Despia, and they're going crazy. how do I implement this? It doesn't work. They're wasting tokens on reprompting the AI. I actually think it's probably a better deal having 200 tokens on the business plan with the Despia MCP compared to having 1,000 tokens on the pro plan without the Despia MCP, because you're going to one-shot all of those integrations. And it's nice to integrate. You see, I can just add location tracking, create a multi-page demo, add more native features. Let's click on add more native features. You can do home widgets, push notifications, save to camera roll. Like look at this. It even understands the bigger picture about Despia, and it creates those pre-made prompts inside of there. But let's say we want something very specific. Let's say add a native local bio login screen. This is a very custom thing that normally I would have to understand first before I implement Despia into it, because I would need to know where Despia makes sense, at what part Despia makes sense, to then explain this to Lovable so Lovable implements it successfully. Now, the beautiful thing about the MCP is it provides always all the right context to Lovable that it needs, because it can be called as a tool. And now Lovable, because it finally fully understands Despia and how the runtime works and how the framework works and how all those implementations work, that it can think about what's the best way to implement such thing. How does Despia work? Let's put them all together. So for the first time, you can really have Lovable think correctly about Despia and correctly implement those native features one shot inside of your application. This is a big, big feature. So while this is now editing stuff, let's already publish our project with Despia and ship it to the App Store and or Android, but I am an Apple user, so for this video, for this demo, I'm going to use iOS. But as you can see, it now implemented this. And this all looks fine, because I would assume, and I would bet on that if we take a look at the code again, it's going to be 100% correctly implemented again this time. So as you can see, it's wrapping up here. Let's take a look at this. And now, oh, I didn't mean to mark that. Let's take a look at the code here. So as you can see, in here, we are correctly calling the Despia callback functions. They are correct. And there you go. And we're calling the Despia authentication function. That is 150% correct. So this is amazing. This whole thing is correctly implemented. And I can tell you that it is correct because I did build Despia. Even the safe areas are correctly added, which is always something that used to get set up wrong. So this is 100% correct. This application will just work out of the box. So we can just publish this and then get it on a domain, right? And this was fast. Let's copy this. Let's go to Despia. So I can verify that everything that it implemented here, one shot, is 150% correct, because I built the SDK and my team built the runtime, and I'm working on it every day, and I know what's working and I know what will not work. And I've seen lots of implementations that do work, and I've seen many more implementations that don't work from all of our users. So I've never seen an AI be able to generate a hybrid application with Despia this accurate. Like, this is 100%. There's no room for improvement anymore, besides adding automated publishing directly into Lovable, which we're doing. That's version 2 of the MCP. But now in Despia, in the dashboard, it's very simple. I uploaded my app icon, my app name. I now just paste the Lovable link. That's the link to the live app hosted on Lovable, right? There you go, this one. And now I'm going to do publish app and then Apple iOS and publish project. That's how simple it is. You don't need VS Code, you don't need Cursor, you don't need Xcode, you don't need Android Studio, you don't need all the other stuff that you would normally use when you're using Capacitor. All of that is cut out, and it's a way simpler hosted process to do this. But you still export your code, you own the code. You can always export your code for Swift and Android, and it's a fully human readable code. It's not spaghetti code. So it's fully human readable code that you can open in Xcode, you can extend, you can hand over to a developer. If you say, Despia, I don't like it anymore, you can export the code, you can hire a developer, and you can have them improve it. You do always have access to the raw source code that is human readable. So there you go. Now, in terms of human readability, most of our team is in Germany, so some of the comments may be in German, but besides that, it's human readable. And so it will be, you can always translate them with AI. But it's a little bit of a problem convincing our developers to write comments in English, because they always write them in German, and then we have to translate some of them in English, and then some of them get, forgotten about of the framework. But it's still human readable code, and thank God AI can understand all languages of the world. But there you go. Now we have shipped the application and we have added all the features. And again, we can now add pin fallback. Again, Lovable now fully understands how Despia works. It understands that there will be a hybrid approach of your application where you have the native one and the web one. So we can add a pin fallback when biometrics fail if you want. And this can happen in the browser, for example. So in the browser, there can be a pin fallback. Now, I would not know how it would validate if the pin is correct, because it's a client-side application. We'll see what it does. It'll probably hard-code some random value that always has to be the same. But my point is, it now understands on a deep technical level how Despia works, and it can do amazing integrations with Despia. And then inside of Despia, you do get the benefit of having an easy-to-use editor where you can one-click publish stuff to the store, where you can add all the add-ons, all the native features, and all that kind of stuff. So this makes the process very, very simple and very, very easy. And then it's building the application on a real Apple computer, so we don't even need to have an Apple computer, and we don't need to know anything about Xcode. We don't need all of that at all. It does the process all for us. It's very convenient. It's the easiest way to build a mobile application with Lovable, and also probably the best way now with the MCP and the deep native integrations and the abstraction and the simplification of native functionalities. Because even if you take a look, for example, at RevenueCat's documentation, I doubt that you can implement a RevenueCat paywall in just one line of code. So Despia abstracts all the complexity, but still gives you access to all the powers. So implementing Despia functionalities is going to be token minimized. So the idea of the Despia SDK, that's what you'll be using to integrate this in Lovable, was always how can we generate an SDK that's made to be used by AI coding tools. So while the SDK is also very convenient for developers writing code by hand, the Despia runtime before, when people built Despia applications by hand, because Despia has been around for a while, was not optimized for AI tools. The SDK, the documentation that you see right now, that is the Despia function, this SDK was specifically only made with AI models in mind. That's why all the implementation is minimized to allow most native features in one line, so it doesn't blow up your context. It can always understand how those Despia functions put in together, because they're very token efficient, and it's very easy for AI to follow code that's on one line rather than following code that's on multiple lines with complex object structures. So this SDK has the best setup possible to work great with AI tools, because it was made to be used by AI models such as Lovable. So now, as you can see, it added a pin fallback here and all that kind of stuff. So I do like that here. Now, as you can see, requires native processing demo. Again, this is just a demo application, but I'm still very interested to see what's going on here. We can add more native features, we can forget pin recovery, and then we can always say, what else can Despia do, right? And it will then be able to provide me, for the first time in history about this, accurate information about the native features that we can implement. So this is going to be great. And the MCP also provides it best practices for responsive UI to make sure that everything is rendered correctly. So you have monetization features, add mob, all that stuff, device access. Let's say add contact access, please. Add contact access, please. I can just tell Lovable to add native contact access, something that would normally be a pain to set up or at least to get working correctly, right? With all the things you got to add into the plist in the native project, and then you got it working on iOS. Now, how do you get it working on Android? There's a cross-platform capability, situation going on. Despia handles all of that for you, and the MCP gives Lovable all the implementations that it needs to implement this. And again, the code that it generates is very minimal. You're not going to have 100-line code to add native contact functionalities. It's going to be 1 to 2 lines. So it's designed to be very token efficient as well as an architecture. Now, our application was built successfully. It's now probably already post-processing with Apple. It will probably take a minute or two to be fully approved by the App Store as a draft application. So we'll take a look at this. But now also, as you can see, I added native contact access to your demo. This will let you request permissions and read device contacts. So this has been now added to the demo here, request contact access, and it knows exactly the schema in which Despia will be able to send you the data. So it knows exactly how this works. So let's compare the schema. If it is correct, could be wrong, right? But it's really good at what it does. So in our documentation here, if we take a look at contact access, right, you will see that this is how it returns the contact access. And you see there in an array, this is a list, this square thing, as an array, it's a list. And then we have the name. So it even gets and understands the correct schema in which data will be returned from Despia, so it can set up a web fallback or an editor fallback and make sure that you're not just implementing the request to get access from the native features, you can already in one go implement the way how you're showing the native data that's being sent back into the application. So you do have a really nice deep native integration. Now, as you can see, the app was built successfully. Apple is still post-processing it, which with all the vibe-coded applications now heading the App Store can take a little bit longer. So I would expect this to take 10 minutes to be fully released on the App Store, and then I'll make a cut and I'll show you how great this application works. So now, as you can see, I got the application now on my TestFlight account. That is where we can test applications before we have to finally ship them to the store, because when we have an application that we're just trying to test and it's still in development, we don't want it to be on the store yet. So this is kind of like the internal app store for applications that are not live yet. So let's open the application. It is running though as a real native application here. And as you can see, we can now test all the native features, right? Let's test biometric verification. Look at this. Do you want to allow my app to use Face ID? Those are native features that are normally very hard to implement, and you don't have them in PWAs. So let's allow, it does the real native Face ID, and now I can detect the platform. You see it's running in the Despia runtime, and I can do haptic feedback, which I don't know if you can hear it, but it does work brilliantly out of the box. We can now do biometric verification again. Just how cool is that? And it knows that it was successful. That's the best thing. We can get the unique device ID. Now you have my device ID. Please don't do any harm with it. We could, we can't copy this, but we can now get the store location. So we see my store location is the USA and all that kind of stuff. So now here comes the best thing. Remember, we just added contact access. Now, how do I update my application? Because I'm still on an old version. In Lovable, you just go on Publish, you just go on Update, and the beautiful thing with Despia is you have updates over the air, and that allows you to just, update the application, update functionalities, native functionalities, and you'll be good. Now, what's not allowed with updates over the air? They're very flexible. Apple is really flexible with them now after years of developers building hybrid apps fighting against them. But what you can't do is you can't build an application that is a calculator and turn it into a sports betting app. I mean, duh, but I do have to mention that because there have been people using Despia building a calculator app, getting the calculator app into the store, and then turning it into a sports betting app or some other stuff I don't feel comfortable saying on this YouTube channel. So don't do that. As long as your application, as long as the nature of your application stays the same, you'll be fine with over-the-air updates. If you change the nature, that is against Apple's policy. So don't do a 360 rebrand going from a calculator app to a casino website, right? Or a casino mobile. But I think that's pretty common sense. But, you know, there have been some people, so I do have to say this now. But let's open the application again. And I think my screen froze because, I don't know, the screen sharing software isn't that good. So let me get that sorted out. Let me just stop sharing the screen here. Okay. And now let's start sharing the screen again. There you go. Let's try that again. It's the Wi-Fi for sharing the screen. It's not too good today. Ooh, and it doesn't go through. Phonecast not working. Let's see. Am I connected to the Wi-Fi here? Yeah, I'm connected to the Wi-Fi. So let's try this again one more time. And it should come through now. There you go. So now I can share with you the app update. So now, as you can see, I just reloaded the application. And now we do have contact access. So I can click on here. It now wants to get access to my native contacts. Isn't that incredible that you can build this in Lovable? I'm going to select specific contacts. I'm just going to allow Apple and John Doe. Let's continue. And now allow sharing those. And now we'll be able to share them. Now, one thing that I didn't fully get right is waiting on the contacts to be available because it has to call them. So what we need to do is it only added the functionality to retrieve the contacts. It didn't add the functionality to fetch the contacts. So what I can do is I can just go on Visual Edits. And, oh no, we can't do this anymore. We have to select element, but, oh, they removed this. Okay, so let's say add also a separate button to load the contacts, not just to request them. Request them, a separate button. A separate button. Now, we did do this like 99% perfect. Separate button. There you go. We did do this like 99% great. There are some things that don't work. Now, the nice thing is when something doesn't work with this MCP, Lovable has extended contacts in how it can debug those things. So I can be very vague, such as this, saying, hey, add a separate button to load the contacts, not just request them, because this is request contact access, but there's no button like load contact access and see, retrieve the contacts that we loaded. So we now need to split this and have like two buttons for loading that. Obviously, you can enhance the workflow and how it calls that. Maybe it can pull for context for a couple of like seconds until it has one after an intent was made. So there's some stuff that we can do for that. I just needed to be then responsive. And now it's splitting it into two functionalities. We see the responsiveness isn't fully doing too well here, but we can select this here. Let's try this element here. Reset styling. And let's do some padding to the sides here of like 1 rem. Oh, we can't do rem. We're just fixed to pixels. So let's do 20 pixels by 20 pixels, or maybe visual edits not that working well. So let's just actually manually do it. Let's just say visual edits. I'm just going to select this one, give it padding, and make them be under each other, just like this. I'm going to send this, and there you go. Also, the UI can have subtle improvements. It's not looking too high end. It always does the purple gradients and all that kind of stuff. Not a purple gradient, but still purple, hinting it is made by AI. Even though I can't talk bad about purple, most of Despia's dashboard is purple. Even though it is handmade, there's no AI in it, besides the AI agent that will help you fix your build errors. But now what I just want to do is I want to try the new themes here with visual edits. No, it's not actually visual edits. It's a separate section now. We can go on the new design, and then we can go to themes, right? And now we can adjust the theming. So let's try some themes here. Lavender, Brutalist, Obsidian. Like, this is really cool. Like, tight, we got that going on. I like tight, that looks very high-end. Let's apply this theme here. Look at this. Isn't that nice? Now it's applying the theme. So we can customize this. Oh, this looks really nice. I do like this. Way better than what we had before. And then let's just also say, make sure to add proper safe areas. Now, I think we already have them. I just want to make sure, though, that it's added. And the nice thing is, you don't always have to keep copying documentation now. You never lose context about how Despia works and how to implement Despia. So if you're building a very big application, if you're trying to build a scalable application, but you're trying to stay within Lovable, this is now going to be such a great thing for you. Let's take a look at this. Now, it will add a proper safe area for iOS notches and Android navigation bars, even though Android doesn't fully have a standardized full screen support, but that's fine. Doesn't know about the Android bells and whistles, but doesn't have to. Despia handles that for it. Let's take a look if it's implemented correctly. Okay, now we have the environment safe areas. Let's take a look at the Despia safe areas. Let's take a look at this here. There you go. Let's tell it, add Despia safe areas. And then, just to make sure it has fresh contacts, make sure to load the docs from the MCP. Despia. There you go. Let's just tell it that to make sure that it implements the safe areas correctly. So sometimes I would say like every 30 messages or every 15 messages, you may want to tell it to just take a look at the MCP again, just to make sure that it fetches everything correctly and context management is being taken care of, because that's a big thing when you're developing applications with AI. It's context management. Is even though you still may have some data in some files, you always want to bring in critical data like a little bit fresh. So like every 15, 20 messages, something like this, maybe even 10, you want to tell it, can you just take a look at the Despia situation? Just make sure that you know about it. So it's in fresh memory, it's fresh context, and then it keeps implementing everything correctly and beautifully. So now you can take a look at it. I've already implemented proper safe areas using CSS environment variables based on Despia Web Standard, which is correct for React. Let's say Despia has their own way of handling safe areas, and you can find the info in the MCP, right? Safe areas, those are like the safe areas. Oh, let's do internet. Oh, my internet connection doesn't work. Let's try that again. Now it works. There you go. Despia has their own way of handling safe areas, and you can find that info in the MCP. So I'm just going to say, make sure to take a look at that again. And as you can see, when you just always mention the Despia MCP, it's always going to do a fresh look into the MCP to get the information and all that kind of stuff. So really cool what you can do with it. As you can see, found it. Despia provides its own CSS variables for safe area. I'll update the implementation to use var safe area top and var safe area bottom. So again, you never have to research about the Despia SDK yourself. Even if it can find the information directly, it's going to be able to just with natural language get this resolved for you. And again, the more you use the Despia MCP, the better it gets. For example, now I just found out everything else works great. Safe area, probably Lovable has some internal system prompts that make it a little bit hard for it to consider Despia safe area as a valid option, right? So we will then have another tool happening in the MCP called common pitfalls or something. And then we'll say, make sure to use that Despia safe areas like this, right? So we add more context that's helpful to the AI. This is just the beta. It's not even a beta. I would even call it an alpha, but this is still solving so many people's problems and it's doing it so great. So let's take a look at this here and let's close the application. Yeah, always keep tracking me. Okay. And now we're going to update this in Lovable. And then when I open the application, we have the application updated with updates over the air, fully compliant based on the store guidelines. And here comes the best. The best part about that is we do have the ability now to update our application over the air. That means that when there's a critical change or you broke something on your backend and you need to fix it, you don't have to wait 10 days for Apple to approve a critical fix that's breaking your application, preventing your users from using it. You can fix those things immediately, one click on a button, and you'll ship it. So now let's test the context feature. We did grant permission. Now let's load the context. And as you can see, I'm loading the context in there. I think the contexts are still in the old theme. Maybe the theme wasn't correctly applied to them in Lovable. We can fix the UI. But as you can see, it's now loading the native contexts that are on my iPhone into our Lovable mobile application. Now we can do some fine-tuning as well, right? This logout button is cut off by the safe area. As you can see here, it doesn't inherit the safe area. So I can just go into chat mode now and say, it looks like the logout button does not respect the Despia safe area. And now the chat mode, so the planning mode, can also reason on how Despia should be set up, what should be done to have Despia correctly set up, and how it should fix this issue to be set up correctly to work properly with Despia. So now Lovable directly within their editor can give you all the support and all the help that you need to make sure that those Despia implementations are correct. As you can see, the problem is that it is absolute positioning and it ignores the safe area applied to the body, and it knows exactly how the safe area works in Despia, which is something that we didn't have before, or that it used to lose context occasionally, right? So let's implement the plan, and it now implements a plan specifically tailored for Despia native functionalities. And the great thing about Despia is you can always export the code, continue in Xcode if you ever want to, hand this over to a developer, and your native functionalities and features just keep working, and you can just extend them. The Despia SDK is more of a principle than something that's hard-coded, so you can use the Despia SDK for your own commands that you create. So this is now high level for very technical people, but if you export your code in Despia, right, the Despia SDK, that is the Despia function, is not something that's hard-coded the features in the SDK. The function works with command, and then in an array, you have your variables, right? So you can then go into the Swift project, into the Android project, if you ever want to, create your own command that is triggering the native functionalities, right? Such as command : // and then you could fire something off. If you need to wait for a native variable to come back into the hybrid application, you can do a variable here, and then you would do await, and you would just define this as a constant here. So you do const data equals await Despia, and then you do return data, and then you just get the variable that you're waiting for asynchronously from the variables that you declare in here, such as this. So the Despia SDK works, and it's so flexible that you could technically go into the Swift project, into the Android project, the Java Kotlin project, create your own native features on top of Despia, build your own plugins for it, and then they will work one-to-one with the Despia SDK. You may need to build your own MCP to have, Lovable understand how they work, but you could then also provide such information in there. And we'll also be able to, with the next version of the Despia MCP, let you put custom prompts in the Despia dashboard that then will be added to your own Despia MCP. So every user will have their own Despia MCP with all the settings happening in their project and with custom stuff you can add into it. So if you, for example, implement such custom schemes, you'll be able to then register them in Despia to have them be fed as documentation into the MCP. So cool stuff that you can do with it, very flexible. Let's publish this fix and let's see if Lovable now was successfully able to help us fix this thing that's happening here. So let's update this. And then the beautiful thing about over-the-air updates, you can just fix those things just like this. You don't need to rebuild your application. You don't have to go into Xcode. You don't need to spend $3 on a virtual Mac computer just to build this update, to test it again. You can just do this all over the air. And we're going to have amazing offline support coming. But the thing is, we had to wait for offline support till Lovable supports MCPs, because implementing offline functionalities without the MCP is going to be a nightmare because it is a complex task to do. I don't want to make it simpler than it is. But now with the MCP, Lovable gets exactly the context that it needs to implement offline functionalities successfully based on the Despia framework, because offline functionalities for hybrid apps has always been a battle. We were able to find a very smart solution for it and to still have over-the-air updates for the offline screen, which is something that usually requires you to have code push and all that kind of stuff. We essentially built our own code push that you host yourself, because our philosophy at Despia is we don't want to be an infrastructure company besides renting out computers to you. We don't want to host your application because if we get a hacker attack, we don't want to be responsible for your app being down. So you host everything yourself. So we have a beautiful partner integration with Netlify that will allow you to host your Despia application for the offline screen with over-the-air updates, just like code push, for free. And you can then go into the Despia dashboard and say, make a push to update the offline screen, and then it will update all offline applications. And the best thing about it is it's for free and you host it yourself, but it's so simple. It's just 3 button clicks. You don't even need to have GitHub and know all about that stuff. We do that all for you, so it's super convenient. But you still have the ownability of if you would be a very technical person in hosting this yourself. So we're not trying to sell you our code push solution for $50 a month. We are implementing our own code push alternative to be 100% self-hosted and to make self-hosting so simple that everybody can self-host their code push alternative. So for over-the-air updates, even for static bundled applications, which is something that will be a whole video of its own. But that is why it took a little bit to get offline support, because we don't want you to be bound to our infrastructure to have to pay for that. Despia should be a one-time payment, and it should stay a one-time payment, no hidden external hosting payments. So host yourself, and it's so simple now. But that was it. Enough advertisement on the side. I can't help but do it. But now, as you can see, the button is fixed, and Lovable was correctly able to readjust the button, make it very nice, and make sure that the safe areas are implemented for the native interfaces. So now, for the first time in history, you can build precise mobile applications with Lovable without having to copy stuff over from other documentation sources, losing contacts. The Despia MCP solves all the problems to make mobile application development super accessible for every Lovable user, and it's so simple shipping to the store. It's 1, 2 clicks, and now I'm pushing another update to the store. Now, and the best part is you don't even need to push updates to the store, because you can just make the changes in Lovable and they're updated immediately on the App Store. But, let's say there's a new version of iOS. Those are the 2 steps that you take to get your application working with the latest iOS or the latest Android version. And we even manage key store signing for you, and you can always export your key store. We're not like those other tools that don't let you export the key store and then you can never migrate away from it. We give you full access to the key store. We'll help you recover it. We'll help you migrate somewhere else if you grow outside of Despia. We're not jealous. We just understand that Despia is, for most people, a temporary solution until they get funding or something. So we provide you the best platform for a temporary solution and the best platform for a long-term solution. And we don't try to keep people that are just in it for a temporary solution to be long-term with Despia. We let you export your code. We let you export anything. No hard feelings if you try to migrate away from it or do those things in-house. We're just happy that you built the MVP with us. And for everybody wanting to have the full application always built in Despia, we will always keep innovating and always have amazing infrastructure and amazing implementations that are not bound to our own infrastructure, so you always self-host with ease your application. Thank you so much for watching. I am very excited for the MCP, and I do hope that lots of you go into here, settings, and just go on integrations and tell Lovable that you do want a native Despia integration by clicking on missing an integration. You put in Despia native so they know it's the correct one and not the collection card that always pops up on the internet. And just tell them that you want it, submit it. This will help us a lot. And then it will also help many Despia users be able to get this working already on the free versions of Lovable as well. and then the code will be correctly implemented. How cool is that? So this is the Despia MCP, and it works with everything. It works with Lovable. It works with VS Code, Cursor, Windsurf, Claude Code, everything. You could even work with it in Claude and ChatGPT, and you can implement that in your own tool that builds mobile applications and all that kind of stuff. And you can use agentic cloud builders to then build Despia applications with the push of a button. So very flexible, and this is just the start. The MCP will be able to create new projects. We'll have a REST API to fully let you programmatically do everything. So much more cool stuff is coming, but I just wanted to give you a full deep dive in how I built a mobile application in Lovable with the Despia MCP without ever getting anything wrong. And even if we got something wrong, like with the context, we were able to just, with one prompt, fix it. This has never been done before. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate that, and see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.